on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV Sticks, Roku Sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now joining me on Football Talk, otherwise known as formerly CFL Talk. Joining me is David Morassutti and our special guest, Eduardo Harari. Hello, David.
Hola.
Hola, Eduardo.
Hola, Frank. How are you doing?
Hey, what you call your pasa? I think that was who said that? I think it was George Carlin. But anyway, something like that. So here we are, guys. Real quick, football. We're going to talk about football. We usually talk about the Canadian Football League, and I was just wondering if there was a subject as far as the Canadian Football League that interests either of you. Free agency is on its way. Guys like Judge are staying in Calgary. We have a couple of nice pieces of news there where players are going back to their original teams. Is there anything else, David, that you'd like to toss in before we talk about the other football league, the NFL?
No, I mean, I think that is the story, right? Don't really think there's any other story that really tops it.
Well, the CFL webpage has Ferguson talking about ranking the Canadian pending free agents, which in the Canadian Football League, that could be an imperative thing.
Yeah.
I guess, he has Michael O'Connor at the top of the list. Thumbs up, thumbs down, Eduardo? Down?
Well, he's the top Canadian quarterback.
Yeah, that's left standing in BC.
Because, see, the way that he does it is he does the top for each position.
Yeah.
Okay,
the top running back's Andrew Harris.
Yeah. I don't see any Canadian running back that's a free agent.
That are free agents. There's one in Winnipeg I'd pick over him.
True, but he's not a free agent.
Agent. Fullback, Mike Miller.
Yeah, I mean, fullback, it's kind of a niche position because not every team employs it the way that it's traditionally employed. So, but Miller is among.
He's there, like he says here, because of his special teams.
Yeah, that's where the fullbacks really possess their values for a lot of teams, is with their special teams. If it wasn't Mike Miller, I think Declan Cross would have been up there too.
Here's one that we all know, and this one's I think this is a pretty. I'll call it a lock. Curly Gittins. If you don't count the Grey Cup, especially.
Yeah, I mean, he even mentions it here that Nick Dembski would be but no, Curly Gittins Jr., when used and targeted properly, I don't even think among the top Canadian receivers. I think he's among the top receivers in the league.
He sure was during the season. He did have a point in the season where we all, about 2/3 of the way through the season, he looked like the guy. More than the Canadian guy. He was the guy.
Yeah, no, it's funny because, I thought he would have been among the top priorities for the Argos to bring back because he's a ratio changer. But I also know he is looking at some NFL opportunities, and that could be a part of the reason why he hasn't signed in the CFL yet.
On the offensive line, if Nick DeCastro played, he could have been in this conversation. But his injuries this year, and the Argos are definitely looking forward to him coming back. The coach, he's very high on him coming back and thinks very highly of him. But for the guy that did well this year, he says Ferguson says Michael Couture.
Yeah, no. You mean anybody on that Winnipeg?
That's not mentioning Stanley Bryant.
No. Well, exactly. It's not surprising because Winnipeg does employ one of the better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Defensive line, Robbie Smith.
Yeah, definitely.
After that game he had in the Grey Cup, He was part of the reason. He was the reason why they won it.
Yep.
Like
Deflection.
everyone was talking about when they're talking about the Argos and Chad Kelly marching down the field and getting the field goal. Robbie Smith had an important sack. I mean, he ended up also getting a penalty call. But he tipped the field goal, which is so rare to happen. So rare, and it was
at that point in that game.
Career. First time in his football career.
Amazing, isn't it? Cameron Judge, we talked about him, the former Argo that was traded to Calgary, has really found a home in Calgary, and he's full value for going back there. He's a great linebacker. We had a chance to follow him here a lot. No disputing him.
No. A bounce back season for him because he did not have a good season in he not have a good season in Toronto. He definitely had a bounce back.
2021. And the guy he traded for, the best defensive back, Royce Metchie.
Yeah.
Not bad.
It's funny. Yeah, like I think he's not as clear cut. I think he was. It's funny because he was traded for Cameron Judge.
Exactly.
But there are some other guys. But yeah, Mechie's got the name recognition for sure.
Okay, well, let's go to the No Fun League. Well, okay, the NFL, and we'll talk about the first game. The Dolphins almost surprised Buffalo.
No, they did surprise them. They gave them a run for their money.
They gave them a scare.
No, they gave them a run for their money. And I'll tell you one thing: if you, I love Buffalo, but the way Buffalo played this game, they did not deserve to win.
No,
but if you go statistically, they churned up far more yardage than the Dolphins did, 433 to 231, an extra 200 yards. That's a good game, 200 yards.
Mm-hmm. But when you have a 17-3 lead going into with 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, and you lose that lead going into the third, into halftime, I mean, that's sad. That's truly sad. And the only reason that I will say this, the only reason Buffalo won is because they had that 11th man in the field, and that was the crowd.
They were ahead 17-0, David, and it really was. I think if the Dolphins don't take all the penalties they took, it might have been a little different too, because they took some bad penalties.
Yeah, no, they did. Those are things that you play a really good team. Like the Dolphins were able to stick around because of that. But if you play against a really good team, those mistakes are going to burn you. And it could be the difference between winning and losing a game. So, I mean, if you're a Bills fan, the good thing is they did it in a game where they won. Now the question is, will they be able to overcome it? Will they be able to shake it off in a way? That's what I'm saying, because the Bengals are not going to let them get away.
It's a little different team.
Well, you looked at what that game against Baltimore, a fumble on the goal line, they take it back 96 yards.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that Miami, those penalties hurt as well, because they finally caught Josh Allen making a mistake when he was ahead 17-0, and they really could have buried Miami. And then, Josh, he made a mistake, and, it was an excellent opportunity for Miami to do something, Eduardo. And you're right. If you want to also talk about, Eduardo, the finish, the second half, how important do you think? Because I think it's really important that these two teams knew each other. And it's harder. I think it's harder to break away from a team when they know you.
Definitely. I mean, let's put it this way. Miami and Buffalo have been rivals. And not just because of they have no similarities. I mean, one plays in good weather, the other one plays in lousy weather. But they have been rivals since Dan Marino's era with Tom Kelly. So I mean that that that's that's going far enough. And like I said, for me, Buffalo did not play. They didn't do justice to all the positive stuff that they had with them. I mean, what more encouragement is that your teammate came out of the hospital after a concussion, trying to give you the win in Baltimore. I mean, they had the inspiration, they had everything, they had the home field advantage, and they were this close to losing it.
Well, they were behind. A scoop and score led to a lead for Miami, David, and they didn't hang on.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Go ahead, Eduardo. You want to say something?
I mean, if you think of how the coaching of Miami was, that they went all the first half was done by kicking field goals and penalizing Miami's mistakes when interceptions and fumbles and this and that. That's sick for a team that is supposed to be a contender for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, and also you can throw in Miami's inexperience, under center, and how there were so many clock violations.
I mean, just think if they had their quarterback, if they had the first string quarterback, what this game will look like.
Yeah. No, I totally. Even their second stringer, right? Like
Yeah.
they were down to their third. Like Bills fans can be happy about the win, but you'd be a third string quarterback making his first ever playoff start and was on the road, right? Like I said it was going to be a blowout because everything pointed against Miami, and the Bills they wanted to make it tough on themselves.
You remember what I said? This was a good game for the underdog. And
makings of a great underdog.
I almost got my wish. I said Miami.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. I didn't want to bet against the Bills. In a way, they're our local team. They're the closest team to where we all live, and they're kind of a home team in kind of a way. So it's always nice to cheer for the home team and hope that the local fans, of which Toronto has a few Bills fans, end up elated because they win the game. But I'm sure, as you both have hinted, every Bills fan was wondering whether, no, please no. And they were listen. Buffalo by far was the better team. Buffalo by far had more yardage. Miami kind of gave the game to Buffalo. The little bit that Miami did badly, which was penalties and clock management, and the quarterback being inexperienced, they were as close as you could get. But I'm not one of those people who believes that you could add, okay, number 2 quarterback. Oh, and let's add what the difference that he is with the other. And I think then you have the defense. I like to think that teams rise to the occasion. And I believe that Buffalo suffers from everything a favorite, in a first game of the playoffs. This is why, we watch in sports all the time, upsets that happen, because to be honest, the top teams are looking past the bottom teams, who are usually the ones they meet early in the playoffs, right?
Right.
The only thing I can say is I hope that Buffalo doesn't play the same way against Cincinnati, because they are going to lose that one. If they play the same way they came out to play against Miami, Cincinnati will crush them. Because
there's no doubt that Cincinnati is a far better team. But fortunately for Buffalo, and as you said, David, they had this bad game at the right time. If they're going to have a bad game like this, it's best that it happened here, and it becomes kind of a wake up call. And now they've got to think not only about the guy that walked out of the hospital, they got to think about the team that's going on the field up against them a little more. I think this is where they're going to have to be a little more aware of their opposition. This is not a Miami team they're playing. They're playing a team that I think they made it to the Super Bowl last year, didn't they?
And not just that, they have a hell of a good quarterback. I mean, you cannot you cannot bet against him uh, in playoff situation. Uh, and and the other thing that I'll you know what, it Cincinnati is accustomed to playing in cold weather. It's not Miami, so you have to really pay attention. Uh, you know, and they also have to think they have their two the defensive backs are injured from the Miami game.
Yeah, so
So
they were handicapped. Let's move on to David's favorite game of the week. Well, I don't know if we can call it the favorite game of the week. Oh yeah, that's a Jersey over there. Um, the Cowboys won the most lopsided game of the week and probably one of the most lopsided games in a while. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady, 31-14. He didn't even look as good as he did in his first playoff game. Some might suggest this might be his last football game in Tampa.
I was going to say, I hope, yeah, last game in Tampa, I could see that. I think he sees this was very reminiscent of his last game in New England in the playoffs. Look, team was just outplayed start to finish. Offense looked brutal, right? I mean, there were some drops and stuff, but
yeah,
he has no running game there, right? Like it very much reminds me a lot about his last game in New England and what led to his decision to move on. And I think there's going to be many teams calling, and there's going to be many teams that are going to have the situation he's going to want to go to.
he already has his next contract, and we know where that is. He's going from one seafood town to the next. He's going to the wharf in California, and that's his next stop. That's a team that can give him his last Super Bowl. He has maximum of 2 more seasons left in his career.
Why do you think that's a good fit?
Basically, if you look at this
perfectly for him.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. What?
He's got the perfect roster for him.
Oh, okay.
An elite running back in Christian McCaffrey. He's got an elite tight end in George Kittle. He's got 2 dynamic receivers in Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. They got a defense that's, when healthy, among the tops in the league. Like that just screams to me as the perfect spot for Brady. If they decide that they want to pony up, well, I don't know how much. He's probably not going to take that play for that much. He's been taking cuts on his salary for years and years and years. But the question becomes, is San Fran has always made it known that they've had some interest, but I wonder if they feel like it's the right move at this point for them.
They have a young quarterback that has, I don't know, has he caught lightning in a bottle?
I think he's making, look, if Brock Purdy's doing this well in this offense, imagine what Tom Brady can do in this offense.
Oh, okay, so Purdy doesn't deserve that much credit?
He deserves credit because he's able to convert on the plays, right? But it doesn't take much to be successful in that San Francisco system. Jimmy Garoppolo, he was doing pretty well in that system too, right? Like there was never any fall off. Trey Lance, he's a younger quarterback. It was going to take him a little bit more time. But yeah, when you get somebody you just tell him, look, when you can hand the ball off to Christian McCaffrey, get it to him through the backfield, it's so easy, that offense, in my opinion, because
he definitely didn't have a running game in that game against Dallas. But let's get back to the Dallas game. David, this is your team. You got I hope you don't mind me saying, you got a little bit caught in the disbelief that Dallas could win this game. What made you think, or what do you think? And I'm not going to ask you why you thought that, but what made this game so easy for Dallas? Because it really did end up being real easy.
The defense took advantage of the fact that they didn't have the running game, right? So because the running game wasn't there, Brady didn't have those check down options with the running backs that he likes
Or
to have
time.
as well, or time. So they made sure that they didn't give him time, and they knew where he was throwing the ball. They
Yeah.
knew it was either going to go to Mike Evans or Goodwin or Godwin. Sorry, Godwin. Right? Like this was with Dallas. This is the type of defensive effort that when I see it, I like. That's one I feel that they can be a contender with. But I want the problem is too is that the Tampa offense has just been so bad all year. I can't. I give them credit for dominating, but I also have to remember that this was an offense that should have this defense should have dominated.
Yeah. Going into the game, Dak Prescott was on a bit of a roll. I don't think he proved that he could maintain the role. So he played well, and he's played well recently, and he's built on it, and that's something he hasn't done in his career.
No, there was a lot of talk into going. I mean, he said he didn't acknowledge any of it. I find that a little hard to believe being the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. He probably had the most pressure out of all the quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
Going into this weekend, I felt like Dak Prescott had the most pressure on him to perform because the odds were against them. Brady 7-0 in his career against Dallas. Dallas had not won a road playoff game since pretty much before I was born. It's a long time, folks. They hadn't.
Yeah, I'm gonna laugh too, Eduardo. Go ahead.
They had been a piss poor team on the road. They're just coming off the worst game I have seen them play all season. And he does that. He puts up arguably one of his better games of his career.
They had a little bit of luck too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
along with the being good.
What I think he did, and as I've been asking for it more, is Dak has to use his legs more. I know that there's always going to be that concern about his ankle and, the fact that he had probably one of the toughest injuries to come back from. But when he's able to move around, it makes that offense, because he's got to give his receivers time. Like, those receivers need time. But I think the fact that Dalton Schultz, the tight end, very underrated in my opinion. He makes that off. He makes such tough catches that the other receivers don't always make. And the offensive line had an easier time because Dak was able to extend plays with his legs and didn't need them to. He didn't always have a clean pocket, and he just did enough to get the playoff, right? And so that's my concern, though, going forward. Jason Peters likely doesn't play in the next game. That offensive line is going to have a very tough time against San Francisco. It's a very different defense they're going up against, which is why I think Dak is going to have to rely on the running game, and he's going to have to rely on, making those quick plays, because I don't think he's not going to have that much time as he did against Tampa.
Michael, mid-gallop, out of bounds, back in bounds. Did you see that? Did you see that as a play that was missed by the officiating?
Well, it's funny because they explained it that because the defender from Tampa touched it as it was being thrown, and Gallup reestablishes himself in bounds, it avoided that play, like the issue of him being out of bounds.
Oh,
yeah. So I said he was out at first when I saw the replay. I thought there's no way he kept that right. I think it was his right foot in bounds. But then the official. This is what I love about what ESPN and these networks are starting to do is they have the rules expert.
Yep.
Right there, and he said because he touched the ball, the defender touched the ball before Gallup made the catch, it avoided that penalty. That penalty then didn't even become a factor, which I didn't know. But that's what really good. That's what a really good broadcast can do.
It was an interesting play to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, I mean, I was worried that play wasn't going to get made because, that's sorry, that was That was that like Michael Gallup is probably the only receiver on the team that can make that play. I'll say that. He's
But
the
his
only
favorite
one.
receiver on the day was Dalton Schultz.
Yes, because he was the one that was going up, and he was the one taking more of the physical toll to make the plays. And Dalton Schultz has been one of Dak's favorite targets all season. Right? He was injured, I believe it was last year or the year before that. Like when he was out, the Dallas offense was in all was out of sorts. That's what he means to this team.
The
Yeah,
one
he had 8
thing, David,
targets from Prescott.
the one thing that I saw in this Dallas game, for the first time in a long time, I saw Dak stepping out of the pocket a lot to
Yeah.
making those throws. And normally Dak sits in the pocket as long as he can. And it made him look very strong. Really, I mean, because he had the options. He could run it himself or pass it. And we know if Dak runs, there is a very rare chance that they will catch him.
I'll say his best play had to be that touchdown that he ran in. They brought it. They reminded everyone that it was the fact it was pretty much the same play as what Peyton Manning had done to the Cowboys years ago when he was in Denver,
Yeah.
where you make the other team think that a run's happening, and you fake it, and it's the easiest play you can make. It's the easiest play you can make, and it's because Dak is using his legs. He hadn't been using his legs that much this season,
Yeah, no,
and
he hasn't. But
and
his
I
health
don't.
also is something that he's getting to being healthy. He had a couple of tough years injury-wise.
Oh no, that's there's no doubt about it that like he is someone that I think is looking out for the fact that he knows he needs to be healthy for this team to be successful. I'm just looking here, like you know, he was usually a guy that he would average over 5 yards per carry. Last season it was 3. The year before that it was 4. I mean, and this year it was 4. But if you go back to when he first started his career, 3 straight seasons with 6 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah,
It makes it opens up way more options for the offense when they realize, oh, he can actually run it in.
you look at Leonard Fournette. Who would have thought that he would have gained 11 yards on 5 runs?
You know what's funny? Because Dallas is usually not
They're
uh,
run friendly.
run. They're not. They suck against the run usually.
They're run friendly.
And you
And
know what? I'll credit the guy on this jersey, Leighton Vander Esch. He was excellent against the run. It's going to be tougher for him because Leonard Fournette is more of a north-south runner, not an east-west runner. Christian McCaffrey is not much of a north-south runner, but Leighton Vander Esch played a big part in that, in stopping that run game.
So Dallas gives the old thump to Brady. Prescott builds on his reputation that's been on the plus side. They win and they move on. Dallas moves on. That's something they haven't done in a few years. We talked about the Cincinnati Bengals. They played the Ravens of Baltimore. The Ravens did not look like the team that we're accustomed to. What was the difference in this game, Eduardo?
I think it was Cincinnati's running game. They really played well. And as I said, they have Burrows is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL by far, because what he does with the ball, for a guy that came from no experience and took this team to a Super Bowl last season, it's just unbelievable what he can do with the ball. And and he, and I think we still haven't seen everything that he has in his arsenal. because you don't see him run as often as he can. And I think that that's what makes Cincinnati a force, because you never know what he's going to attack you with. He can throw, he can run. He sometimes steps back out of the pocket with such an ease that makes it very hard to rush him. And that's what Cincinnati did well against Baltimore, who is accustomed to always trying to sack, and it didn't work this time.
What do you think, David?
Well, it's funny because this game was close. Turnovers were a big factor, right? We talked about the fumble. There was the interception early on for the Bengals in this one. I'll give Huntley a lot of credit because I don't think anybody gave him much of a chance against the Ravens. I thought he obviously could have done better. I'm sure he would. Tyler Huntley would say he could have done better, but considering the odds were kind of against him in this game, I thought he did quite well. The running game was good too. I mean, the problem is they couldn't when you're trailing in a game, there isn't much you can really use with the running game, but they were still really good with the run. And if I'm Buffalo, that's something that you have to really think about because that's going to be a way to that's going to be a way to make life difficult for this Bills defense is to find a way to for the Bills offense is to try to stay on the field and maintain drives. Cincinnati's going to want them to throw the ball. Bengals also, when I look at the Bengals game, I thought they were going to run away with it in the second half. They did have a great first half. They were really slow to start. I thought they were going to be on a good path because I thought, Jamar Chase, there was one drive where he had all 5 catches and he was 9 of 12 for targets on 12 targets at one point. I thought he was going to take the game over. Then it just never really materialized. And I'm like, I mean, credit Baltimore because they found a way to shut it down. But Buffalo is going to make that even tougher. They know who the top matchup is going to be. It's going to be Jamar Chase. So now Joe Burrow is going to have to find somebody else. And I felt like he kind of struggled with that other guy to get the other guys going. I think T. Higgins will have to be that guy if you're going into that next game. He's going to have to pick up a little bit more of the slack because I don't think Buffalo is going to have an easy time against that Bills secondary.
We probably only have time for about 2 games, so I'm going to give each of you a chance to call a game. Eduardo, what game do you want to talk about?
I have to go with the New York Giants because
that's a good call. I mean, that's a team that once again a quarterback, in Jones, much like when the last time they won a Super Bowl, a young quarterback with a bit of a reputation, but not a history of success. He looked outstanding, and he was really good on his feet as well.
It's funny. No one gave the Giants a beat against the Vikings.
I didn't.
Viking fans may suggest that this is just a typical Minnesota Vikings choke approach to an important game.
Frauds.
They're purple because they're choking. They're gagging.
Go
ahead, Eduardo. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop on you.
I know.
But no, the Giants were David. The Giants were a good team here, and they have another young coach. There are so many young NFL coaches out there, and they're having so much success early in their careers. This is one here.
Yeah, Brian Daboll. It took time. I felt like I thought that New York was in a bad spot to start the year, but then they found their stride. It also helps that when your best offensive weapon, which is Saquon Barkley,
showed
up, And I think the best decision they made was to give the younger receivers the rope. They were the ones that were going to be leading the charge, but it was also Darius Slayton being able to make the big plays. But yeah, Saquon Barkley, like as much as Daniel Jones deserves credit for what he did, if Saquon Barkley wasn't, his running back, I don't know if Daniel Jones does as well.
He did spread the ball around, though.
Yes.
He did move things around, keep the defense guessing. Minnesota, early Minnesota looked like they had this game in the bag. It changed, and I can't believe how quickly it changed.
The one thing I have to say for the Giants, they are goddamn consistent. They that's what
I guess Giants make big plays. No, okay,
you know what? They have been from day one in the season working towards getting somewhere. They knew they weren't going to be a runaway with the league or with the division, but they knew that if they maintain their steady pace, they would get somewhere, and they proved it. And I think, because I don't want to be bad on the Eagles, that the Eagles are a strong team, but if you can beat Minnesota, anything is possible.
But then, is there a hard luck quarterback more than Cousins, David?
Is there one? I mean,
who's more hard luck than him? You look at his career.
I would say Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers would be that quarterback for me, because Kirk Cousins, I've been calling him a fraud since his time with Washington. Like, I'm sorry, he puts up numbers, but when the big moment calls for it, he never delivers. Right?
This was a big moment.
And on a 4th and 8, for him to throw 3 yards, I'm sorry. I don't care what play is called up. That's on the quarterback for not realizing the situation. But my biggest issue, you have arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL in Justin Jefferson. And as an offense, all you can do is get him 47 receiving yards on 7 catches. That is a joke. That is a joke. I feel like in the offense, I think the defensive coordinator was fired. The offensive coordinator should also be fired. Like, TJ Hawkinson had an amazing game because the Giants do not know how to cover tight ends. It has been their thing for years. But there is no way that you can win a game with Justin Jefferson having less than 50 receiving yards. And that's on the quarterback for not finding a way to get his best target into the game against a Giants defense that, simply put, isn't very, they're not a well-renowned defense. They're not known for being a shutdown pass defense. So I don't understand why they struggled to get him going.
Unbelievable. Okay, Eduardo, you called this game. I'll give you the last word on it. What did we miss?
I'm going to tell you, I am going to put this game very tight, and I'm going to take the Giants by 1. In this game.
That's his last word on this game. Okay, David, what game? There's a couple of games left. Which one do you
Chargers. Want? I mean, we have to talk about Chargers Jaguars. We have to talk.
Okay, let's talk Chargers Jags. Get her started. Chargers win it. Sorry, Jags win it 31-30.
I mean, when I hate when people say, "Oh, this is over in the second quarter." No, I'm sorry. Even with Justin Herbert, any team can come back. We just saw that.
Does Brandon Staley get fired?
He should have. I don't know how this guy still has. Like, the fact that the players if the players are saying we need to keep our coach around, I'm sorry. This isn't a let's make everybody happy business. This is we need to win games, and Staley, this is not the only time that he has done questionable things in the game. It's a bit of a mockery, in my opinion.
But he's even being criticized for what he did in the last game. There's a carryover of criticism.
There is. You put up 3 points in the second half. People are like, how do they lose that game? You only scored 3 points in the second half. Okay, I don't care how big of a lead you have. You're not winning that way in the NFL. There was no reason why Justin Herbert should have had 43 pass attempts. Trevor Lawrence was going down and having one of the worst playoff debuts for a guy who's so highly touted. 4
Absolutely.
interceptions, 3 to 1 guy.
Three of them to one guy.
But you know what the Jaguars did? They said, you know what? We got a pretty good running back in Travis Etienne. We're going to give him the ball. 20 rushes for 109 yards.
And frustrated their opposition because they couldn't get the ball back.
The Chargers also have a really good running back in Austin Eckler. 13 carries for 35 yards. He had 2 touchdowns because the turnovers put them in great field position. But you have a great running back. He should have had upwards of 20 carries. But because they decided they want to throw the ball, which when you're throwing the ball as much as they were in the second half, you're giving the Jaguars ample chances to get back into this game. Like, what are you doing?
An ineligible man downfield?
Which rarely gets called. It's a very rare penalty.
It hurt, though. It changed the game a little bit.
Yep. Staley got outcoached. Doug Peterson, he's a good coach. The Eagles should have never let him go in the first place, but I mean they're not complaining right now. They were complaining after the move was made, but Doug Peterson outcoached Brandon Staley in this game. Whether they can pull this off again, I mean, you can't count the Jaguars out of anything. They're now everyone's favorite bandwagon team because of what they did.
Absolutely.
And that's dangerous. That is dangerous. They have a lot of things working out for them.
Confidence is a big tool.
Very big.
Eduardo, let's get your view on this game. The Jags win 31-30, a nail biter.
I am not happy.
How much did you lose? Oh, no, you don't gamble.
I don't gamble.
How much pride did you lose?
No, you know what? It's just I don't think the Jags season merits to advance into the next round. It's just my personal opinion. I know someone is going to hate me for it, but it does merit it. They didn't play the type of season to get into that position. The Chargers did.
Yeah, and when you allow a team to make a comeback the way they did, I know there's 2 ways having a lead can end up, right? You keep it or you let it go. And in this case, they let it go, and it was very surprising. Mistakes everywhere. They basically opened the door.
They just did not just open the door. It was like you were watching a different team of the whole season. The Chargers just didn't react, and they didn't get up. Normally, teams, when you make a mistake, the next play they are explosive. The Chargers were laid back
because of that lead.
Yeah.
They made too much. They were too comfortable with the lead instead of playing each exchange of the ball as if they have to win each exchange, as opposed to looking at the bigger picture. I think they got lost emotionally looking at the big picture. And David, you've already talked about the coaching. That probably had a bit of an impact too.
It had a major impact. Major impact. What I also think what this game also did, what Jacksonville realized was we're not losing this game, we're giving this game away. So let's stop giving the game away and let's make them work for it. And once that mentality changed, once the Chargers had to work for it, they couldn't do it. And I credit the Jaguars. They found a way to get to Justin Herbert. They found ways to make life difficult for him. I think they're also missing Mike Williams in this game, the receiver. He makes that off. He gives that other catch option for in that offense. He would have probably made a little bit of a difference. But without a running game, I'm sorry, there aren't many teams that can win a playoff game without having any semblance of a running game. It doesn't happen in today's NFL anymore. Even the good teams, the ones that have elite quarterbacks, find a way to get the running game going at key times.
Absolutely, it has to happen. It can't. It's not an iffy situation.
No, not at all. Right? And if I'm the Chargers, this game is it's a prime example of what you need to do if you want to see this team take the next step. They were very lucky in a way to get to the playoffs, but they were my Super Bowl pick before the year started. I thought this was a team that could have gone
Absolutely
to the Super Bowl, but not with that coach.
These games this week were full of contradictions. The favorites came up flat, the underdogs came up big, and teams proved why they're as good as they are. So we had a bit of everything in this set of games.
No, we really did. Like, absolutely. And a lot of coaches that were timid, I will call it timid with their calling, suffered in many ways. And those teams that made the really bold calls and were able to convert on them, they were the ones that were the most successful.
Yeah, Eduardo, setting aside it being the first playoff game, the jitters, I guess, and or the concern with wanting to do something good might have been a factor this past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, there were games that were surprises. I mean, you have to really to think about it. I mean, like I said, Miami really gave a good game to Buffalo, a big surprise in that game. I mean, I don't think the Vikings expected what they were given, and definitely the Cowboys win will go into the history books as one of the most dominating wins by any team that wasn't supposed to be there.
Last word to you, David. Moral victories early in the season, yes. Moral victories useless at the end of the season in the playoffs.
Yep. I want to see if we have any more upsets coming up.
It's going to be interesting.
Like,
I am giving you one. I think that Philadelphia is in for a rude awakening if they don't at home. If they don't think about the Giants as a good, consistent team. They are not a great team, but they are consistent.
The last time the Giants won the Super Bowl, this is the kind of playoff they were having. It's the same playoff, where the Giants just kept doing enough to win.
And nobody expected them to.
Nope.
You know who they beat in the last few playoffs to get to the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Yep. So I'll tell you, you get in. I'll say this. I've seen it many times before. You get in, anything's on the table.
Absolutely. And the playoffs. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nothing's off the table. You say one team's favorite, it's the playoffs. Anything can happen.
Yep. For Eduardo, thank you for doing this.
It was my pleasure. Always ready to come in with you guys.
David, as usual, thanks for doing this. It was fun talking the NFL.
Always fun.
All right. For Eduardo Harari and David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Football Talk. Airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. Nope. Thursdays at 8. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For football talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great week, and enjoy the football coming up on the weekend.